Okay, guys, so part 3 of this 3-part series. This last topic is morning afterwards. Guys, I think this information may be the best yet in this 3-part series. How to deal with not having your 4-legged friend around anymore. All the memories, all the sorrow, all the emotion. Stay tuned, guys, as we pour from our hearts to help you guys move forward. Thank you. Thanks once again, ladies, for joining in this third segment of the series. Our dogs are getting older, and we want to be able to know how to care for them, how to say goodbye in a gracious and kind way. And then finally, here we are talking about how to deal with the mourning and the sorrow, the grief afterwards, moving on. But before we get going with that, in one of our earlier segments, Michelle, we were sharing one of the cool things that we could do for our dogs in their senior days is make them tea. I've never heard of this before. I've never seen dog tea at the grocery store. Help me out. What kind of tea can we make for our dogs when they get older?
So, one of the best recommended teas for dogs, just like with people, is decaffeinated green tea. And the reason is because green tea contains polyphenols, which help to reduce inflammation. So it helps with arthritis. It helps with liver inflammation, and it also repairs cells. So just like you've heard this with people, it's the same with dogs. So what you would do is you would use a 3-to-1 ratio, steeping a bag of decaffeinated green tea just for people, just like you get at the grocery store, and steep that bag of tea into 3 cups of water. And recommended is like a purified water, but we have really good water where I'm at, tap water, and that's what I use. And you steep it into water, you make a tea out of it, and then you can add, for smaller dogs, you'd want to do like maybe 1/8 of a cup with each meal. So you just pour that right on into their bowl, whether they're eating kibble, you make like almost like a gravy. If they're eating raw, you just pour it on the raw diet that they have. 1/8 a cup with each meal. And then if it's for a larger dog, you could go up to 1/2 a cup. And you can use different teas. You can use a chamomile. You could do even a black tea. You could do, I'm trying to find a mushroom tea for my dog. My dog has cancer. I give him a lot of mushroom supplements because mushrooms are really good for dogs with cancer. And if you can find a mushroom tea, even that is good for a dog that might have some sort of disease, and that would be helpful to them.
Interesting. I've never heard that. So if you have a dog in the South, maybe Texas or Alabama, do you give them sweet tea?
Well, I'm not sure about that. Actually, the sugar is probably not too good for them, but yeah, especially older dog, or a dog that has like the thing about sugar is sugar feeds cancer cells. So for my dog that has cancer, he's on a keto diet. We try to not give him any sugar or any grains of any sort, because we're trying to just extend his life as long as we can. And we're concerned with longevity. So I'm always into, researching different things that might, help him.
Another thing that we missed in one of our earlier sessions, Janet, you had said something about preparing to say goodbye, like coordinating with the vet. Would you share with us how to do that and why it's so important?
Sure. So I think part of getting prepared for an animal to leave us is also being prepared with what's going to happen when you go to the vet and how much it's going to cost, what their procedures are, so that you're not shocked and surprised and trying to deal with that emotion as well when you're taking your animal in, or when you're having the vet come to your house, or wherever it is that you decide to do for your pet. So, whether it's a week before, a month before, and the animal is not it will get better, and that the end is nearing, reaching out to your vet and talking to your vet, and getting either brochures or having the ability to talk with them and kind of talk through what the procedure is, how they do it, what the cost is, how they handle it. Do they do cremation? And if they do they do a cremation where they do it with other pets, or if they do it singularly, so you just have your own pet's remains, so that you have a clear idea of what is happening when you go to the vet, and maybe it gives you the opportunity to deal with those emotions before you actually have to take your pet in or have them come out and let your pet cross over the rainbow bridge. So it's just maybe being more prepared emotionally and knowledge wise before you actually get to that point where it's actually time to make that decision and to move on that.
Maybe have that conversation a week in advance or so. It's a difficult chat, but have that with your vet a week or so in advance, and talk about things like maybe cremation and how to handle things like that, right?
Yes.
So the topic that we're going to move forward with here, ladies, by the way, Honey, thank you so much. Janet from Kansas City, Michelle from Chicago, for sharing your insights and your time. All of this is just a free donation to help the Bulldog community. Michelle is reaching out to all dog owners in this effort, and how to honor our dogs. So the topic today is dealing with the grief, the mourning after we do say goodbye. And I just asked you ladies to maybe just share a story, and in that process of the story, it would help our viewers maybe start connecting the dots of how to pull through this. The good news for me, and then I'll get out of the way, is our dogs are not suffering anymore, and we will see them again. And for me, it's just that simple. I don't put a lot of emotion into it after that. Forgive me for that. What would you like to share as a story?
Well, first of all, I think we were sharing a little earlier, and I think we all agree that we all grieve in a different way. We no two people grieve the same. So you've got to allow yourself time, give yourself however much time you need in that grieving process. For myself, my story is, I refer back to my dog Diesel, because he's the last one that we had to say goodbye to. And it's a difficult time. It really is. But one thing that helped me, we did have a lot of his things around the house, and some people, they like to put their things away because it's just too hard and it just hurts too bad. With me, I was the total opposite. I needed to see his things, because to me, once I put all those things away, and then he was really gone he was gone, and I wasn't ready just yet in my grieving process to do that. Later on, yes, but not at that time. I still wanted to see his things. I still wanted to touch his things and hold on to them. And as I did that, I would remember good things like the ball that I used to throw, or the bed that he would lay on, and I'd lay there and I'd feel closer to him at that time. I like to write. So one thing that helped me was, I wrote poems about him. I wrote poems about him when he was alive, and I wrote one final poem just, in dedication to him, and my way of saying goodbye, and I will see you again, once I cross over to where you are. So I did that. My daughters were wonderful with me. They knew how much he meant to me, and he meant to the whole family, actually, because he watched our kids grow up. He watched their friends grow up. Everybody knew Diesel. So they got me they sent a picture to Painting with a Twist. And so I got to go out and spend an evening with my daughters, and I got to paint the love of my life at that time, which was my dog Diesel. And it was kind of therapy. It really was. I like to garden as well. So another thing that I did was, I wanted a garden in dedication to my mom who had passed away from cancer. And I also wanted a garden for Diesel in memory of him. And so I found his favorite spot out in the yard, and I just had all kinds of little objects and things, and just made like a little memorial, just like a little I remember you, this was your spot kind of a thing. So we can do a lot of things that will help us through the grieving process. But I think above all else, it's allow yourself the time that you need to get through that. And you will, you'll have a place in your heart again, because you'll know that you'll see him. You know that you can maybe have a little love, open your heart up to another, pet eventually, and give them the love that they deserve just as much, So allow yourself time is what I want you to leave the audience with, and grieve in your own way, and let yourself go through the process. You can't speed it up. There's just no way to do that.
For me, my last, my current dog, so I have an 18-month-old Bulldog from I Am Bulldog, he's been just an absolute fabulous addition to my family. But prior to that, I had a Cocker Spaniel, and he was about 14 and a half years old when he crossed over the Rainbow Bridge. And it was hard because we got him when my kids were little, and just like you guys, he grew up with my kids, and we had a lot of goofy stories about his life, because he would just do silly things or do things that could actually harm him. So we tried to remember, fun stories. And one of his fun stories was that I made chocolate chip cookies, and we knew that he would pull things off the counter, but I had put them in a Ziploc bag on a plate, and had pushed them to the very back of the counter, and had to go to the back room. And by the time I came back out, he had pulled them off the counter and he had eaten them. And so I'm kind of freaked out because there's chocolate in there, and I know chocolate is bad for dogs. And so I called the vet, and he gave me a proportion of hydrogen peroxide and water mixture to give to him. And so we're outside with the dog. We give him the mixture, and I'm like, okay, Gabe, run him around the house. So he runs him around the house to kind of shake it all up inside, and he's still not getting sick. And so then I'm like, okay, pick him up and shake him. So I've got my 9-year-old shaking the dog to try and get him to vomit. so that he doesn't get really sick. And so we tried to remember those kinds of things. I a little different from Eva in the fact that when I would see his things, they would make me emotional and sad. And so I put those things up for quite some time until I was at a point where I could actually see those things and not break down and become emotional. And then eventually, gave a lot of that stuff to shelters so that other dogs or other pets could utilize them. Because at the time I didn't know if I would have another animal. But that is how, we all as a family worked through the grief. And like Eva says, it is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. And I even find now, 7 years after his passing, there are things that will hit me and it will make me emotional because we just love the dog so much. So everybody's process is different, but again, it takes time. We've got pictures of him up around the house, and we have incredible memories of him. And we just look to those things, that gave us comfort initially when he was gone.
Yeah. We do too. We have pictures up on the wall. There was a time where my kids said, "Mom, this is ridiculous," because I had their pictures lining the hallway, and then I had Diesel, full size 8x10, just like theirs. And they're like, you're like children. And, well, he is. He's my fifth child there. Michelle?
So my fourth child was Molly. I have three human kids, and Molly was the fourth, the one that was raised with my kids. And I just remember afterwards, the day afterwards, the house was so quiet. You wake up and Molly was always, she would sleep in our room and she wasn't there. And you'd go downstairs and she'd always pad downstairs, but next to me, she didn't do that. She wasn't there at the dinner table. She wasn't, she didn't wait for me to go to bed at night like she always had. I worked from home. She wasn't there in my office with me. And so the loneliness was really deep. And I think that's to be expected after you lose a family member. You have to remember that the reason why you're so sad is because you love so much, and everybody does grieve very differently. Some people put the things away because it hurts so much to look at them, and others need those things around them. It's you shouldn't feel bad for how you have to grieve, whatever you have to do to get through those first couple of days when it's so painful, just like when you lose a human person. But eventually you're able to tell the stories and talk about them just like you're there, because memories help keep them alive, just like with people. I mean, the more stories that we tell, the more that they're going to live on in our hearts and our memories. And we do that. Molly never got to have a final, like we always talked about having a Molly day where, we would take her for cheeseburgers and ice cream and everything. And unfortunately, she didn't get to have that because her tumor, it was very sudden that she had got diagnosed with a stomach tumor that just prevented her from eating. So what we started to do was we started to have Molly Day with our other dogs, because one, we always say that she raised our dog Moose because we got him when he was younger, and Molly just taught him how to be a dog. And so we kept saying, we're going to have Molly Day now. And we'd take Moose to go get cheeseburgers, and we'd take Moose to go get ice cream. And it was a way for us, for her to live on by saying, we're going to have Molly Day. And I think it's important to keep them alive and in our hearts by doing things like that. Whether, I would wear her dog tag on my necklace because I wanted to keep her next to me, or I have her stuffed animal still. Like Moose didn't get to have that. Like her favorite stuffed animal, like we still have it. I wanted to keep it. And, I think those things help keep them alive with us while we're here until we're able to see them again.
That's wonderful. That's just a wonderful way of remembering and keeping your pet so close, Michelle. I was just listening.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, what a fantastic idea. And that is the hardest part when they leave, is just feeling that loneliness, that emptiness. You see, you're used to them coming, and like, Lisa would greet me every time I came home, and he'd have this weird little bark that he would do, like a woo, 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 woo. It was just like funny. It was unique to him, and it's like, okay, I'm not hearing that anymore. So, but yeah, just fine. And oh my, just what you were saying about remembering those funny stories, Janet, that was awesome too, because that's what we do all the time too. Diesel and I used to have waffle Sunday. And I would pretend that he would come into the bedroom and he'd stare at me. I swear that dog knew exactly what day of the week it was, because he'd come in on Sundays and stare at me. And I'd pretend that he'd talk and say, and today we're having waffles. So we go in and I'd just make him a little tiny one, and and we'd have the rest. But it was a ritual that we enjoyed. Over the summer we'd go to my gazebo, and it would just be he and I'd have graham crackers and coffee and a few grapes, and and he'd sit there with me, and we'd enjoy the morning together just on the weekends, because it was just a thing that he and I would do. So just remembering all those things is just it's a fabulous way to just keep them alive in our hearts and in our lives until we do meet again.
One of our sons, he went away to the Navy. He's 21 years old. And, we call as often as we can. And Christian calls home, and we're talking, and he's just like, Dad, I really miss Diesel. And Diesel had passed away a few years earlier. And I'm like, oh, yeah, son, we all miss Diesel, kind of just, that kind of a level of conversation. Is like, no, Dad, I really miss Diesel. And I was like, wow, Diesel was kind of the one, because we're children, and really he helped us raise them. And the entire school, we had stair step kids. So our house was very quiet. Then it was very chaotic for about 15 years. And then it got really quiet really quick. Everybody moved out. And Diesel was part of that really chaotic time frame. The neighborhood, the school, they all visited us. So yeah, he really touched a lot of lives.
One thing we haven't touched upon, I remember when we were talking about this, we have other pets sometimes. Sometimes it's just not an only child as far as an only pet. Sometimes we have pets that grow up with one another, and got to remember them too, because they also, take part in that grieving process. I remember a pet that we had. It was an Australian Shepherd, actually. And Punch, remember Punch?
Yes, Punch.
Punch and Suma. Suma was like a mom to him. It wasn't his real mom, but it was like a mom to Punch. And when we moved to San Antonio at one point, because Mike had to go to school, and we had to move into an apartment when we first got there, and they would not allow multiple pets. So we had to rehome Suma, and our dog Punch just grieved. I mean,
for
he
days.
Cried for days, would not eat, and everything else. So we got to remember our other pets that stay behind, because they go through a process themselves. So I know, Michelle, you were sharing some ways that we could deal with that part of this process as well. Remember that?
Yeah. I went through that myself when I was talking about losing Molly. My younger dog at that time, Moose, he was devastated because he had never been without Molly. When we got him, we had Molly, and she basically raised him. And if you have a dog that dies, at home or around your other dogs, they're going to see that, and they might be devastated. Moose saw Molly die, and it hurt him. Or if you take your dog to the vet's office and your other animal remains at home, they're going to wonder what happened to them. Like, where are they? Like, why aren't we out looking for them? And so you just have to give them a little bit extra love, because, they don't quite understand. They might know that they're gone, or they might have seen them, but they're not getting, that whole, like, it's forever type of thing. And they're lonely. Dogs are pack animals. And if they have a pack, that they're part of, whether it's part of like a human pack or a dog pack, they're going to be lonely. And Moose was so lonely and devastated and depressed after Molly died. We had to really watch him. He stopped wanting to go for car rides, which I always that's what I did. I always took them on car rides with me. Every errand we'd get in the car, all three of us. And suddenly it was just me trying to get Moose in the car, and he wouldn't come because Molly wasn't there. So we just gave him some extra love. And finally, 5 months after Molly died, we pulled the trigger and we got another dog. And when we got the other dog, I hadn't realized how much he needed that. But I saw how much he needed it because he just immediately took to the new dog, and he seemed happier. He seemed, like kind of like I could feel like a sigh of relief from him. Like, I have a pack again, and he had, that's how he had been raised. So I think he felt better once he had a new dog that he could be the mentor to. Molly had been his mentor, and now he was going to be the mentor to a new dog. And I think that really made a difference. That really was a turnaround for him, because up until that point he was really depressed. And I just think you have to be careful. You have to watch over them because they're suffering just like you're suffering. But if you're not talking about it, you're not, acknowledging it, and you're just trying to act like normal with them, they don't understand, and they're not normal. They're grieving as well. And you have to, help them through that process.
And I think something you had mentioned as well was, maintaining your routines, whatever that routine happened to be. Keep them in that, don't just stop living, don't just stop doing the things you used to just because you're grieving over your beloved pet that's gone. Keep those routines for those pets that are left behind. So, they
Yeah.
them, going.
Yeah. If you were going for walks every day, double the walks.
Yeah.
That's what we did for him. He was lonely and he was depressed. So we didn't just do an evening walk anymore. We did a morning and an evening walk.
Right.
And I think that, increased activity helped him because, getting out more, and it just kind of, he enjoys getting outside. So increasing the activity of what he enjoys was helpful to him.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies, for sharing just stories from your life, and I believe that that's part of the process of healing, is just sharing great stories about how our four-legged friends enrich our lives.
Guys, thanks for tuning into this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, make sure that you subscribe, and if you've got a friend that's got a Bulldog or is interested in getting a Bulldog, be sure you share this video with them because I'd love to have them aboard too. Y'all, thank you for your time once again. Have a great day.